Austin, Texas, where the sun burns through the pavement and startup dreams burn just as hot. 3 years ago, I walked into Streamline Nexus with an old laptop, a cup of cold coffee, and the kind of faith you only have when you still believe hard work gets noticed. 3 years later, I was the operations director, the one who kept everything running while others stood in front of cameras talking about vision. And I really thought that this time my work would finally be seen, until they brought in the next generation to ruin everything. That morning started like any other. I got in early, straightened my desk, booted up the servers, and checked the data streams. Project Atlas, my brainchild, was ready to launch. The AI system my team and I had built over 2 years had passed every test. It could change how hundreds of companies manage their supply chains. I could almost see the future unfolding, until Jack Monroe, our CEO, walked into the room with that TED Talk smile and said, "I've got great news for everyone." Jack was always the type to say big things. He loved words like innovation, breakthrough, and the energy of youth. But that morning, his eyes didn't land on the engineering team. They landed on a young man sitting in the front row, a face none of us had seen before. "Everyone," Jack announced confidently, "please welcome Ryan Porter, our new intern." Sparse applause. Ryan just graduated from Stanford. He's the son of Mark Porter, an old friend of mine and one of the investors we're currently in talks with. Jack paused, smiling wider. Starting today, Ryan will be co-leading Project Atlas. It felt like someone had unplugged the entire room. Ryan stood, young, polished, his smile so white it could blind you, and said a few words about next-gen mindset. Jack clapped him on the back, proud as if he'd just passed the torch of innovation itself. Around me, heads nodded, hands clapped weakly. No one asked why. We all knew the answer. His father played golf with the CEO. I stayed still. No smile, no applause, just the sound of someone's pen tapping the table. Familiar. I'd been here before, in rooms where the future had a face, and it wasn't mine. But this time, I was ready. When the meeting ended, Jack called after me. "Emma, I know you'll help Ryan get up to speed. He's got some great ideas." I smiled. "I'm sure he does." My tone was calm, but inside, everything went quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop, navigated to a folder I'd created more than a year ago. Contracts, vendors, legal. Inside was a file labeled Clause 9B, Proprietary Core Access. I didn't open it. I just stared at it. I remembered every line I wrote, every safeguard no one ever bothered to read. I'd built it into the system like a hidden shell, not out of paranoia, but because experience had taught me one thing. In places like this, they'll always try to take what you built, unless you lock it down first. Ryan stopped by my desk, all eager charm. "I'm looking forward to learning from you, Emma." I looked him straight in the eye and smiled. "So am I, Ryan." When he left, I exhaled. Outside the glass window, the Texas sun hit the coffee cup on my desk, glinting off its cold surface. I took a sip. The bitterness spread across my tongue. If you've ever built something from nothing, only to see it handed to someone else because they knew the right people, you'll understand. That morning, when Jack talked about fresh perspectives from the younger generation, I didn't know who he meant. Now I do. And what he doesn't know is that this so-called fresh perspective just stepped onto a mine I buried long ago. If you've ever worked yourself to exhaustion just to watch someone else take the credit, you know the feeling. That hollow, freezing ache, like someone quietly pulled your spine out. I looked at the cold coffee again and smiled. If you're still listening, you've probably been there too. The unseen hand behind every success story no one remembers. Tell me where you're listening from. And if you like stories where the underdog doesn't shout, just walks away at the exact right moment and lets the whole system collapse, stay tuned. Because what comes next isn't an explosion. It's the kind of silence that makes everyone shake. The morning meeting ended with applause as thin as paper and a bitter taste only those who've had their work stolen will recognize. I went back to my desk, opened my email, and saw a message from Jack. Welcome, Ryan, to the Atlas Leadership Circle. Circle, that's what they called it. I just didn't know if I was still inside it or already out. Ryan showed up beside me a few minutes later, still wearing that bright, effortless smile. Emma, I'd love to look over the Atlas system structure. Jack said, you know it best. I turned my screen toward him, walking him through every interface, explaining the logic, the data flow, the fail-safes. He nodded, took notes, genuinely curious. But beneath that eagerness, I could see something else, the quiet confidence of someone who believed he'd earned his spot. He had no idea he was just the investment collateral his father brought to the table. That afternoon, Jack called me into his office. His room was always brighter than the rest of the floor, thanks to those giant glass windows overlooking downtown Austin. Emma, he began, his tone oily and warm, you know how much I value what you've done here. No one can deny that, but I believe Atlas needs new energy. New energy, I repeated, keeping my voice even. Exactly. Ryan's young, he understands the market, and most importantly, he inspires investor confidence. I understood. Confidence didn't come from competence. It came from connections. Jack continued, you'll still be here, of course, overseeing operations, keeping things stable. Ryan will handle development strategy. So I keep the engine running while he gets the title, I said quietly. Not angry, not bitter, just stating a fact. Jack gave a small shrug, that razor-thin smile of his cutting across his face. You know how to run the company. I know how to keep it alive. I walked out, past the hallway where a few people were taking photos of Ryan for the Welcome Our New Innovation Lead post. In the picture, he stood in the middle, hands in his pockets, smile gleaming under the flash. I wondered if anyone in that room remembered that Atlas began as a single Excel file, or the nights I fell asleep on my keyboard trying to make it real. That evening, I stayed late as always. My laptop screen glowed in the dark office, lines of code running like veins across the display. Project Atlas v3.0, final testing build. I stared at it, unmoving. I could have shut it down. I could have gone home, but I didn't. Part of me still believed that honest work would eventually be recognized. The rest of me knew that faith had died earlier that morning. The next day, I walked into Jack's office while he was on a call. Trust me, Mark. Ryan's got this. He's got vision, Jack said, back turned to the door. I stood there a few seconds, hearing Mark repeated more than once, then knocked softly. Jack turned, lowering his voice. We'll go over it more during the golf round this weekend. He hung up and smiled at me again. Emma, what can I do for you? I just wanted to confirm system access, I said. Who's getting official admin rights? Ryan, of course. But don't worry, I still want you to oversee him. You're the one who keeps everything stable. Stable. The word they use when they want you to carry someone else's weight. Back at my desk, I opened a new email from Ryan. Hey, Emma, could you grant me access to the vendor dashboard? Jack said you're the only one with permission. I smiled faintly. That's right, I murmured, and typed. I'll review the contract clauses first. Certain permissions require legal verification. I hit send, then reopened the legal folder. The document Clause 9b, Proprietary Core Access, sat there quietly, waiting. Like a bomb with its pin still intact. By Friday afternoon, Jack sent a company-wide email titled The Future of Atlas. He talked about vision, about the next generation, about faith in young leaders. He mentioned Ryan 3 times, thanked me once, in parentheses. I finished reading, closed my laptop, and sat back. Laughter echoed from the break room, glasses clinking somewhere down the hall. I stayed in the empty conference room, the overhead lights reflecting off the polished table, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt calm. I knew I wouldn't argue, wouldn't plead, wouldn't try to prove anything anymore. I'd done that enough. They thought they were replacing me. What they didn't know was that they'd just removed the only person who knew how to keep Atlas alive. That night, I walked home through downtown Austin. The city still shimmered like daylight, neon lights spilling across the sidewalks. A group of students laughed outside a bar. I looked at them and remembered who I was 3 years ago. Someone who believed in every inspiring speech, every promise that talent would find its way. I smiled faintly. Maybe Ryan believed that too. Maybe he thought this was his chance to prove himself. But there's one thing he doesn't know. In this company, opportunities aren't given. They're traded, priced, and sometimes rigged from the start. When I reached home, my inbox pinged. An email from Jack. Emma, thank you for your support. I know you'll make sure everything runs smoothly. I read it twice, then deleted it. No reply. At the bottom of the screen, the Atlas icon blinked, like a lone star stuck in the wrong sky. I stared at it one last time, then shut down my laptop. In the silence that followed, I knew the beginning had already arrived. Not theirs, mine. I didn't leave Streamline Nexus right away, partly because I needed time to quietly put everything in order, and partly because I wanted to see how they'd managed to destroy themselves. From the day Ryan was introduced, the office began to change. People talked more, worked less. Meetings turned into stages for Ryan to share his vision, while I sat in the corner taking notes on everything he missed. Most days, that was everything. Ryan wasn't terrible. He was young, confident, and carried the same kind of innocence I once had. The belief that if you tried hard enough, people would notice. But he'd never stayed past midnight fixing a server crash. He'd never had to choose between 4 hours of sleep and replying to a client. And the most dangerous thing about him was that he didn't know what he didn't know. Jack, meanwhile, grew more enthusiastic by the day. He loved being seen next to the new generation, as if it might make him young again. I spent the first month after the announcement in silence. By day, I kept my department running, making sure Atlas didn't fall apart. By night, I sat alone, combing through every contract I'd ever signed. Clause 9b, the one I added last year, now felt like a lifeline. It stated that I was the exclusive point of contact for all third-party operations related to Atlas. No one, not even the CEO, could override that without my written consent. When I first drafted it, the lawyer had asked, "Is this really necessary?" I told her, in case the future turns out less fair than the present. She laughed. I didn't. But it wasn't just contracts. I had data, emails, memos, technical records. I kept everything. Not out of paranoia, but because I understood how this company worked. The competent got overlooked, the clever got promoted, and the one who kept receipts never lost. One evening, I was working late with the engineering team. Mike, one of my senior devs, asked, "Emma, are you planning to stay?" Word is, Ryan's talking about restructuring. I kept my eyes on the screen. I'll stay until they think I'm no longer necessary. He nodded, silent. We both knew what that meant. That weekend, I visited my mother in Oregon for the first time in nearly 2 years. She looked older. She'd baked me a late birthday cake and asked, "Are you happy, sweetheart?" I smiled, but didn't answer. She touched my hand. "You always said hard work was enough. Maybe people don't see as much as you think, Emma." I looked at her rough, work-worn hands and whispered, "I know." That night, driving back to Austin, one thought kept echoing in my head. If they can't see your value, let them see what happens when it's gone. The following week, Ryan started holding process innovation meetings. He tossed around phrases like streamlining data flows and simplifying operational modules. But what he really meant was erasing everything we'd built. I stayed silent, just watching. I wasn't angry anymore, just certain. I knew exactly what I needed to do and when. One afternoon, Ryan came into my office. "Hey, Emma, I wanted to review Atlas's vendor access. Some suppliers aren't responding to my emails." I looked up, keeping my tone neutral. "They only correspond with the authorized contact listed in the contract. I'll check on it." He nodded, looking uneasy. When he left, I reopened Clause 9b. Everything was intact, untouched. I typed a few quick updates to the access permissions and saved a private copy. That night, Jack sent a company-wide email praising Ryan for bringing a spirit of innovation to the project. I sat in the empty office and read that line over and over. The last sentence of his message said, "I believe that under Ryan's leadership, Atlas will achieve what we never could before." I smiled slightly. He was right. Atlas had never collapsed before. In the days that followed, I began collecting everything that was mine: system backups, client contracts, contingency files. I wasn't stealing. I was taking back what I'd built. I stored everything on an external drive, locked with the date I'd signed my first Streamline Nexus contract. I also created one final file, just a single line of text. Sometimes silence is the loudest way to leave. I worked as if nothing had changed, but piece by piece, I began pulling my threads out of the web I'd built. Every time someone asked a question, I answered with one word less. Every time they asked for help fixing a bug, I pointed them to the documentation instead of doing it myself. They never realized I was unscrewing the bolts of the machine they thought was indestructible. One late night, Jack stopped by. "Emma, I know this transition might be tough, but trust me, we're heading in the right direction. You'll see results." I looked up, meeting his eyes. "I'm not hoping to see results anymore, Jack." He raised an eyebrow. "No, I just want to see the fairness." He said nothing, only nodded and left. The door closed softly behind him, leaving me alone with the hum of the fan and the glow of my screen. I sat still for a few minutes, then opened a new email. Subject line: Notice of Contractual Liaison Authority. Recipient: Legal Department, Streamline Nexus. The message was short and cold. Under Clause 9B of the vendor contract, any changes to operational leadership or commercial representation must be approved in writing by me, Emma Collins, prior to execution. Any action taken in violation of this clause will constitute a breach of contract. I hit send. No attachments, no greeting. And when the email vanished from my outbox, I knew everything was ready. The moment they tried to operate Atlas without me, the system would lock itself down. No warnings, no visible errors, just one quiet message on every screen: access denied. I didn't know who they'd call. First, Jack, Ryan, or me. But I knew one thing for sure: when they did, I wouldn't be there. A week later, while I kept the company running as quietly and efficiently as ever, Jack and Mark Porter, Ryan's father, met at a golf club outside Austin. I knew because the secretary's office accidentally sent me the car itinerary for the trip, as if I were still the one arranging Jack's schedule. I didn't correct it. I didn't reply. I just kept the itinerary out of habit, keeping proof of the things people prefer unseen. That day, Austin's sky was unnaturally clear, the kind of clarity that only comes before something breaks. Jack wore a turquoise polo shirt, laughing loudly every time Mark swung. They talked about markets, about the new generation, about Series C funding. But I knew the real topic: Ryan and Atlas. "Jack, you know I still believe Atlas can change the logistics game," Mark said, lowering his club. "But I need to see a future in it. Ryan can be that future." Jack smiled, adjusting his glove. "You always know how to say what I want to hear." I agree. He's got young energy and a solid background. Maybe he's the one who'll take Nexus to the next level. Mark looked out over the green and lowered his voice. "If Ryan holds a leadership role, I can make sure the next funding round closes early. We both win." Jack stayed silent for a few seconds, then nodded. The kind of nod a man gives when he's just sold a piece of his soul. Meanwhile, back at the office, I was reviewing the quarterly financials. Every number matched: performance, costs, profit. Atlas was more stable than it had ever been. I smiled. Everything was running exactly as I designed it. Every line of data, every contract, every person in the chain, all within the system I built, which meant only one thing: I was the only one who knew how to keep it alive. That afternoon, Jack texted me, "Emma, meeting at 6. Need to discuss Atlas." I didn't have to guess what it was about. The conversation on the golf course had ended. Now came the part they thought I'd be surprised by. The meeting room on the 8th floor glowed under bright lights. Jack sat at the head of the table, Ryan beside him, Mark by the window overlooking the city. When I walked in, the air felt heavy, like the stillness after rain. Jack began, his voice soft in a way that only sounded kind. Emma, first of all, I want to thank you. Atlas has come this far because of your hard work. But to go further, we need new energy, a new direction. I understand, I said. He tilted his head slightly, surprised I didn't protest. Good. I knew you would. Ryan will take over strategic development. You'll continue handling technical and operational oversight. So I do the hard work, and he gets to call the shots? Jack nodded. That's right, Mark added gently. It's about securing the future, Emma. Ryan needs a chance, and you'll still have a key role. A chance. That word had followed me all my life, though never in my direction. I looked at Ryan. He was trying to look composed, but uncertainty flickered behind his eyes. I could tell he wasn't entirely comfortable with the deal. Maybe he understood what was happening, but not enough to stop it. I said softly, "Congratulations, Ryan. You'll need a lot of luck." Jack smiled. "You're a true professional, Emma. I knew you wouldn't let emotions interfere." "Never," I replied evenly. "I only do what makes sense." The meeting ended. I stepped into the hallway, hearing Ryan call after me. "Emma," he said, his voice low, "I know this might be hard for you, but I want you to believe I really want to do this right. I don't want to be just someone's son." I turned to him. The overhead light blurred his young face into something almost uncertain. "I believe you, Ryan," I said quietly. "The problem is, others don't believe in themselves." He opened his mouth as if to answer, then stayed silent. I walked away, my footsteps echoing down the hall. That night, after everyone had gone home, I reopened the Atlas system. The lines of code pulsed steadily like a heartbeat. I made a few adjustments. Didn't delete, didn't damage, just added a few security checks. One of them contained a simple command: if unauthorized, user, then lock all channels. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and turned off the lights. The next morning, the entire company received an email from Jack. "Welcome, Ryan Porter, as the new Strategic Innovation Lead for Project Atlas." Minutes later, the LinkedIn post appeared. Jack and Ryan shaking hands, the company logo glowing behind them. The caption read, "When experience and the next generation meet, miracles happen." I looked at the photo, then closed the tab. I didn't need to see the comments to know what they'd say. Amazing! So inspiring! The perfect combination. All the hollow lines I once believed. For the rest of that week, Jack seemed lighter than air. He walked around the office shaking hands, smiling, radiating confidence. Around noon, I noticed him leaving early again, meeting an investor, they said. I knew it was another golf round with Mark. As for me, I stayed in my corner, keeping Atlas stable while everyone else celebrated the future. Late Friday night, I sat alone, staring at the data map on my screen. A web of connections, transaction points, automated clusters I had once been proud of. Now, it just looked like a living creature, massive, intricate, and dangerous in the wrong hands. I opened a new email, typed a few words, then erased them. There was nothing left to say. All I had to do was wait. Because once they tried to run Atlas without me in the system, one wrong command, one unauthorized access, the creature would snap its own chain. Not because I broke it, but because I built it to obey only the person who truly understood it. And that person was never Ryan. 2 weeks after Ryan was announced as Strategic Innovation Lead, the company held the internal launch of Project Atlas, the event that, by every measure of fairness, should have been mine to lead. I still showed up. Not going would have made me look bitter. Showing up, at least, meant I could watch how they turned my sweat into a show. The conference room was bright, the hallway lined with fresh flowers, the air thick with perfume and overbrewed coffee. Jack stood in the center, mic in hand, voice brimming with excitement. Today marks a major milestone for Streamline Nexus, and leading this new chapter is a young, dynamic talent, Ryan Porter. Applause filled the room. I clapped too. 3 steady, polite taps. Ryan stepped forward and straightened his tie. Behind him, the big screen flashed the title Project Atlas, Reimagining Logistics for the Future. I smiled faintly. I'd named that project. I'd written every line of its description, even that tagline. But today, I was just another face in the third row. Ryan began speaking, reciting the strategy document I'd written almost word for word. Atlas will create a seamless AI-driven bridge between suppliers and customers. We will... The word we repeated over and over. He spoke with conviction, but each sentence felt like a pinprick against my skin. I wasn't angry, I just felt something colder, emptiness. He didn't know whose words he was echoing, nor the meaning behind them. When the presentation ended, Jack clapped Ryan on the shoulder, his smile as bright as the flash of a camera. Outstanding. This is exactly the spirit we need. More applause. I stood, slipped out quietly while they posed for photos. Back at my desk, I opened the folder Contracts, Vendors, Legal. Clause 9b, Proprietary Core Access, was still there. I reread every line, remembering how I had added that clause into our vendor contract with North Axis Logistics. I'd told the attorney it was to ensure system security. In truth, it was the only chain protecting what I'd built. I opened another file, Vendor Agreement Renewal, Year 3. The bold text stared back at me. Authorized Liaison, Emma Collins. Any change of liaison requires written consent from Emma Collins and vendor legal approval within 30 days. I pressed my lips together, a small gesture, like repeating an old vow. I knew Ryan would soon need that access, and I knew exactly what would happen when they tried to contact North Axis without me. That afternoon, Ryan stopped by my desk. Hey, Emma, quick question. How do I send the latest Atlas update to the vendor? I can't find the access permissions. I looked up, calm. You can't find them because they're under my authorization. Is there a rush? Jack wants to send the demo to North Axis before the weekend. Then he'll have to go through legal. By contract, I can't release access without written approval. Ryan frowned. But you built this system. Why make it so complicated? I smiled. Because that's how we protect it from unnecessary mistakes. He nodded, still confused, and walked away. When he did, I opened a new email. To Legal Department, Streamline Nexus. Subject, Vendor Access Notice. Internal reminder, under Clause 9b, any transfer of liaison authority or technical asset management between the company and third parties must include written consent from the designated contact, E. Cholson Collins. No exceptions. I hit send. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, Jack sent a company-wide email. I'm thrilled to announce that we're entering the expansion phase of Atlas. Thank you, Ryan, for your creativity and incredible energy. I set down my coffee cup, reading the message again. It felt like attending my own funeral, without the inconvenience of dying. But I didn't react. I didn't need to. Everything was already in motion. That night, I stayed late, opened the system one last time. I exported the backup data to my external drive, then added one final note to the core code. Ownership verified by Clause 9b, E. Collins. When I shut down the laptop, the office lights dimmed, leaving only the screen's blue reflection across my hand. Outside, Austin shimmered under the city lights, as if the whole world was celebrating something I'd already lost. But inside, I felt no tragedy, only the calm of someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. Tomorrow, they'd run Atlas without me. Tomorrow, the system would ask one simple question: do you have access? And when the answer was no, Atlas would do exactly what it was built to do: lock itself. Not because I wanted to destroy them, but because, in my world, justice deserved a little programming too. The following Monday, I went to the office like any other day, but no one realized it was my last day at Streamline Nexus. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to leave quietly, the way you close a door after everything that mattered is already gone. The engineering floor buzzed louder than usual. Ryan was in the center, directing the Atlas team as they prepared for the demo with North Axis. His voice carried across the room, full of adrenaline, like a coach before a championship game. Today's the big day, everyone. We're sending our first live demo to the official vendor. Applause, laughter, the clatter of keyboards. I stood in the back, arms crossed, watching. It felt strange, familiar, yet distant, like seeing an old version of myself, the one who still believed that if you were good enough, people would notice. I went back to my desk, opened my email, and typed a few lines. Subject: Notice of resignation. Jack, I'm officially resigning from Streamline Nexus, effective 2 weeks from today. Thank you for the opportunity over the past 3 years. Emma. No emotion, no bitterness, just a clean period at the end of a sentence. I printed it, slipped it into a white envelope, wrote for Jack by hand, and took it upstairs. When I entered, Jack was on the phone, voice gleaming with self-assurance. Yes, Mark. Atlas is almost ready. Ryan's doing great. Today's demo will prove it. I stood there for a moment, listening to his self-satisfied laugh echo around the room. When he finally turned, still wearing that smile, I placed the envelope on his desk. This is my resignation. He froze. What? I'm leaving the company, effective in 2 weeks. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a language he'd never heard. Emma, don't joke. This is the most critical phase. Atlas needs you. I know. But it seems the company doesn't. Jack stood up, voice tightening. You can't just walk away because of a strategic adjustment. Ryan is your friend's son, I said evenly. I understand. Atlas needs a fresh perspective, right? He went silent. I stepped closer, meeting his eyes. You know, Jack, you once told me I was the foundation of Nexus, and now you're building a new house, but you seem to have forgotten that foundations don't move. His eyes narrowed. His voice dropped, sharp. Are you threatening me? I gave a small, calm laugh. No, just reminding you to review the vendor contract before Ryan touches anything. I'd hate to see you get into trouble. What contract? Clause 9B, I said as I turned to leave. You'll find out soon enough. I didn't look back, but I knew he was watching me go. Not like a boss losing an employee, but like a man realizing he'd just lost control of something he thought he owned. That afternoon, Atlas launched without me. I sat in a cafe across the street, watching the reflection of the control room lights through the tower windows. Ryan and his team were gathered around the monitors, faces lit up. He pressed execute, smiling proudly. I could see it all in my mind, the code running, data streaming smoothly, and then, suddenly, stopping. It happened faster than I expected. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. A message from Mike. Atlas unresponsive. North Axis reporting. Unauthorized access. Ryan panicking. Jack is calling you. I didn't reply. I just stared out at the street, the sunset washing Austin in pale gold. The sound of a coffee cup hitting the table felt louder than it should have. Everything else was silent. A few minutes later, the phone rang. Jack. I let it ring until it stopped. Then again. Office line. Still ignored. The third call, I picked up. His voice came fast, trembling. Emma, what did you do to the system? Why is Atlas locked? North Axis can't log in. They're threatening to terminate the contract. I didn't do anything, Jack. I just don't work there anymore. Don't play games. What do you want? Money? A title? I can... No, Jack. My voice stayed calm. I don't want anything. I just want you to understand what it feels like to lose control of something you thought belonged to you. Silence. Just his breathing on the other end. I continued, slower this time. You always told me I should learn to listen to people with vision. But maybe, Jack, you should have listened to the person keeping that vision alive. I hung up. No anger, no satisfaction. Just quiet, because for once, I wasn't the one trying to be heard. The next 3 days, Streamline Nexus fell apart. The second vendor, Fulcrum Dynamics, delayed shipments, citing a change in authorized representation. Finance reported penalties. Engineering panicked. No one could access the system core. Ryan called 3 times. I didn't answer. On the fourth, a text arrived. Emma, I know you're upset, but please help me understand. I didn't mean for this to happen. I read it, then put the phone down. He'd figure it out eventually, just like I did. By the fifth day, Mark Porter called Jack mid-meeting. I heard later that he shouted through the speakerphone, I invested in your company, not in some intern. How does your system collapse because one employee quits? Jack had no answer. Because the truth was simple. He'd lost the only person who knew how to keep the machine alive. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new file Project Aurora, a system built to never forget its creator. The glow from the screen reflected off my coffee cup, still warm. In the corner of the cafe, a group of students was talking about their first startup, voices full of hope. I listened and smiled. I used to be like them, believing fairness was natural, that talent would always be seen. Now I know better. Fairness has to be built, and this time, I'll build it for myself. 3 weeks after I left Streamline Nexus, Austin felt peaceful in a way I'd never experienced before. No ringing phones, no blinking urgent emails, no meetings where I had to nod through someone's bad strategy. I woke up in my small apartment near South Congress, made coffee, and opened my laptop. The screen was blank. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Streamline Nexus, however, was another story. Rumors spread faster than their own data. A former colleague from finance texted me, Atlas is basically frozen. Vendors pulled out, investors are panicking, and Jack's losing it. I wasn't surprised. They were learning the lesson I'd warned about. When you build a system you don't understand, removing a single link can bring the whole structure down. I spent a few days putting my life back in order, then opened a new business account. Echelon Systems LLC. Industry, AI, logistics consulting, and vendor optimization. I laughed while typing the last line. In my head, I added a silent tagline, advising companies that think job titles can replace people. A week later, my phone rang. International number. Emma Collins? Yes. This is Carmen, VP of Operations at North Axis. I heard you left Streamline Nexus. I guess that's no longer a secret. Her voice was warm, steady. Their loss. They're trying to renew the contract, but we can't. They no longer have a legal liaison. We might need an independent consultant moving forward. I took a sip of coffee. I'd be glad to help, as long as the contract is signed directly with Echelon Systems. Of course, she said. We prefer working with people who understand systems, not just talk about them. We signed that week. Ironically, my first client turned out to be the same partner Streamline Nexus was begging to keep. Across the street, Jack was still trying to prove he was in control. I heard he met with Mark Porter every morning, pretending to be calm. Atlas just hit a small technical snag, he'd say. It'll stabilize soon. Then, an internal email leaked onto an industry forum. We're unable to proceed without confirmation from the authorized liaison, Ms. Emma Collins. Just one small line, buried among dozens of updates. But in the logistics world, it hit like lightning from a clear sky. For the first time, my name appeared in headlines, not as a project support lead, but as the person named in the clause that brought an entire company to a standstill. That night, I worked late at my new co-working space. A small room, soft yellow lights, a window facing the street. I was finishing a report for North Axis when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I knew who it was. Emma, Jack's voice came through, strained but polite. We need to talk. I think we already did, Jack. Listen, I know you're upset, but things are bad. 2 vendors pulled out, the system's locked, and investors are scared. I don't need you to come back. Just help us fix the technical issue as an external consultant. I leaned back, listening to the hum of the AC. You'll need a new contract. Yes, sure, you can draft it. I'll send a proposal. 6 months. Flat fee, triple my previous salary. And full IP protection under my name. A long pause. Emma, you know the company can't afford that. Then find someone else. If they can unlock the system without me, I'll be genuinely impressed. He exhaled sharply. You've changed. I haven't, I said. I just stopped working for free for people who never knew my worth. The next day, I sent the formal proposal. At the bottom, I added one small clause. This agreement is valid only if Streamline Nexus acknowledges confidentiality terms and refrains from any unauthorized access to intellectual property owned by Echelon Systems. 3 hours later, a reply came in. Subject, consider us retained. From Jack Monroe. Body, we accept. Please begin immediately. I read it twice. Consider us retained. A simple phrase, but it sounded exactly like the apology he'd never say out loud. I started the job the next morning, consulting for the same company that once erased me. Ryan was still there, looking worn out. During our first virtual meeting, he met my gaze through the screen, voice low. Thanks for coming back to help. I know. This was my fault. I shook my head. No, Ryan, it's the fault of a system that made you believe you were chosen for your talent, when really, it was just connections. He said nothing. For the first time, his expression wasn't confident. It was aware. A small, fragile awareness, but real. I finished the consulting work in 3 days, delivered temporary access credentials, and full documentation. Jack offered extra pay to maintain long-term support. I declined. I wasn't going back to a place where loyalty only lasted until the next round of golf. The following week, I signed 2 more contracts, North Axis and Fulcrum Dynamics, both named Echelon Systems as their strategic partner. My account balance climbed fast, but what mattered more was what I'd finally regained: control. That afternoon, I got a message from Mike. Ryan resigned. He said he wants to work somewhere that actually challenges him. Jack's silent. The company's downsizing. I read it, then deleted it. Not out of satisfaction, just closure. The story was finished, at least my part of it. I opened the window. Austin's wind carried rain and car exhaust, mixed with faint music from a bar down the street. I poured myself a gin and tonic, opened my laptop, and typed on a blank page. People say success is the best revenge. But sometimes it's peace. I saved the file under the name Echelon, Contract Phase 2. There was still work to do, but this time I was doing it for myself and no one else. 2 months after I left Streamline Nexus, Austin slipped into the kind of heat that makes the air hum. Sunlight bounced off the glass towers so sharply that I wore sunglasses just across the street. At my usual cafe, people were whispering, investors pulling out, the Atlas system still offline, several executives resigning for personal reasons. I didn't ask. News has a way of finding me. One morning, Carmen called. Emma, got a minute? Always. I just got back from the logistics conference in Dallas. Everyone's talking about Streamline Nexus, not in a good way. Someone joked that Clause 9b is now industry slang for never touch what you don't understand. I laughed softly. They learn fast. Yeah, but that's not why I'm calling. A few companies want to work with Echelon Systems. I sent you the list. Hexler Group's on it. I stopped. Hexler Group had been Nexus's biggest client, 20% of their annual revenue. You're kidding. No. They want to meet you. Said they only want to work with the person who actually ran Atlas. 3 days later, I sat across from their executives in a glass conference room on the 24th floor of the Fairmont. The man leading the meeting was in his 50s, crisp suit, calm voice. We appreciate what you did at Nexus, Ms. Collins, even if the circumstances of your departure were unique. I understand, I said. No need to defend myself. We're looking for a new partner for our automated supply chain platform. Atlas promised a lot. The results, well, can you do better? I opened my laptop and showed them Aurora, the successor to Atlas. Leaner, smarter, independent of the broken framework they still clung to. When I finished, silence lingered for a beat. Then the man nodded. I believe you. Draft the contract. We want to start next quarter. The news traveled fast. Former Streamline Nexus director signs strategic contract with Hexler Group. Just a short headline in a financial column, but enough to make Jack Monroe choke in his next board meeting. I wasn't there, but someone from inside sent me the recording. You said Atlas would be operational again, a board member demanded. Now our biggest client has moved to Collins's company. Care to explain? There was a pause, then Jack forced a smile. We see this as an opportunity for indirect collaboration. Echelon Systems is a strategic industry partner. Partner or competitor? Another voice cut in. Silence. That night, an email appeared from an address I hadn't seen in months. From Ryan Carter. Subject: just wanted to say this. I'm sorry, Emma. I thought I was just executing ideas, but I was inheriting someone else's work. I've left Nexus. If you ever need another hand on Aurora, I'd like a chance. This time on merit. I read it and sat still. Not angry, not sentimental, just the quiet understanding that comes when you've walked far enough to watch others begin again. I replied simply, if you're serious about learning, be at the Aurora office Monday, 9 a.m. A week later, Echelon Systems signed 3 more contracts. Aurora was no longer a concept. It had become the foundation for the next generation of logistics management. I expanded the office, hired new engineers, and Ryan actually showed up. No designer suit, no cocky grin, just humility and the need to make things right. At lunch one day, after everyone left, he paused by my desk. Do you ever regret it? Leaving Nexus? No, making it fall. I thought for a moment. I didn't make it fall, Ryan. I just left. If a company collapses because one person walks away, it was never built to stand. He nodded quietly and went back to work. By the end of the month, I was invited to speak at the Women in Tech Leadership Conference in Houston. The topic? When walking away is the strongest move. I'd never liked public speaking, but I stood there and told my story, without names, without bitterness. Just the truth about knowing when to stop and when to start again. When I stepped off stage, Carmen found me, smiling. You just made the entire room stand up. I said softly, I don't want them to stand up for me. I want them to stand up for themselves. That same day, a crisis meeting was held at Streamline Nexus. I didn't need to hear the recording, or word spread fast. Jack Monroe was asked to resign. Mark Porter, their largest investor, withdrew all funding. Nexus shares were quietly listed for sale. An era ended without ceremony. No speeches, no slogans about the new generation, just the silent collapse of a company that forgot to value the people who built it. That evening, I returned to my apartment and opened the window. The city below glowed, alive and loud, but I sat at my desk, watching the screen flicker with one simple line. Aurora. Deployment successful. All systems active. A small moment. Yet for me, it meant everything. No revenge, no need to prove anything. Just the knowledge that, this time, what I built was truly mine. I turned off the screen, took a sip of tea, and wrote in my work journal. People say success is the sweetest revenge. I think justice is the real victory. Outside, Austin roared with life, but inside, for the first time, there was only peace. A month after that fateful board meeting, Austin slipped back into its usual restless rhythm, while Streamline Nexus went eerily quiet. The name that once stood as a proud symbol of logistics, innovation had become a whispered cautionary tale in every startup circle. The company collapsed because of Clause 9B. People told the story with a mix of awe and fear, like an urban legend from the tech world. I didn't deny it. But to me, Clause 9B was just another way of saying I had finally stopped letting other people decide my worth. That afternoon, I went to a networking event downtown. No one knew who I was. Just a woman in a white blazer, sitting at the edge of the bar with a gin and tonic, listening to young founders talk about AI-driven innovation and how they were going to change the world. I saw my old self in them, bright, hopeful, convinced that skill alone would be enough to be seen. When I left the event, Austin was lit up in gold. I returned to the co-working space, the soft amber light spilling over my desk, and saw my inbox blinking. An email from Ryan. Subject: Thank you, Emma. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for coming back to help, but for letting me witness it all fall apart. It taught me something 4 years at Stanford never did. Vision means nothing if you don't respect the people who build it. I'm leaving Austin, heading to Seattle to start over. I hope when I'm good enough, we'll meet again, this time as equals. I read that last line and felt light. No anger, no pity, just a quiet warmth. Someone had finally understood. I replied simply, "Don't let anyone tell you you were given a chance. Take it yourself." A few mornings later, as I poured coffee in my small kitchen, the phone rang. Carmen. "Emma, I've got news you'll like." "I'm listening." "The Streamline Nexus board just announced a restructuring. Jack Monroe resigned, and Mark Porter pulled his investment. Looks like they're trying to sell off what's left of Atlas." I sipped my coffee. "Atlas isn't theirs anymore." Carmen laughed softly. "We know, but you might want to know who's negotiating to buy the tech." "Let me guess," I said. "Me?" "No," she replied. "Us, North Axis, and we want you to lead the redevelopment." I went silent for a few seconds. She continued, "We'll acquire the infrastructure rights from Nexus, but the Atlas core still belongs to you. Let's rebuild it properly, with you as chief architect." I leaned back, watching sunlight stretch across the table. For a moment, I remembered the night I wrote the first line of Atlas's code, when the company was still a dream, and I still believed effort would always be rewarded. Maybe I still believe that, just in a different form. "All right," I said. "But this time, it won't be called Atlas." Carmen chuckled. "What do you have in mind?" I looked out the window, the city bathed in dusk. "Aurora," I said, "because it begins right after the dark ends." 3 months later, Aurora went live. No ribbon cutting, no corporate speeches. Just 12 people. People who understood the system, believed in the work, and one glowing screen that read, "System active. All nodes synchronized." It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. That night, I stayed late. The office was quiet, lit only by the monitor's soft glow. I opened an old email from Jack, the one titled, "Consider Us Retained." I didn't delete it, didn't archive it. I just read it once more and smiled before closing it. Not out of spite, but because it reminded me that every lesson has a cost, and I had paid mine in full. Outside, rain began to fall. I brewed tea, stood by the window, and watched as the city seemed to wash itself clean. Everything had ended not with an explosion, not with noise, but with the quiet peace of someone who finally knows their own value. I opened my work journal and wrote the final note. Sometimes what you lose isn't your career. It's the illusion that someone else will save you. And once that illusion is gone, freedom begins. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped into the rain. The Austin skyline glimmered, raindrops catching the streetlights like fireworks. I walked away, no rush, no glance back. My story with Streamline Nexus was over, but Aurora and I had only just begun.